The crystalline spires of Celestera's royal palace pierced the lavender sky like frozen music. Commander Victoria Stone fought to maintain her diplomatic composure as the twin suns cast rainbow refractions through the transparent walls. After 15 years in Earth's Special Diplomatic Corps, she thought she'd seen everything. She was wrong. The announcement echoed through the Grand Hall, presenting their Royal Majesties, High Prince Asterion and High Princess Aurora of the Celesteran Empire. Victoria's breath caught as the twin rulers entered. They moved with identical grace, their iridescent scales shifting colors with each step. Where human twins might share similar features, these beings were perfect mirrors, down to the crown-like crystalline formations growing naturally from their temples. "Welcome, Earth's chosen guardian," they spoke in perfect unison, their voices harmonizing in a way that made Victoria's skin tingle. "We trust your neural augmentations are functioning well?" Victoria touched the barely visible interface at her temple, the latest in human biotechnology that had helped earn her this unprecedented position. "Yes, Your Majesties. The quantum processors are fully integrated." "Excellent." Prince Asterion's silver eyes studied her with unnerving intensity. "You'll need them. The position of Royal Guardian is not offered lightly," Princess Aurora continued, her golden eyes equally penetrating. "Especially to an off-worlder." Victoria had expected resistance. The Celestarans were notoriously isolationist, their twin-ruled empire spanning 3 galaxies. That they'd requested a human guardian had shocked the diplomatic corps. Now, standing before them, Victoria sensed there was far more to this appointment than she'd been told. "Perhaps," Prince Asterion said, "you're wondering why we chose a human?" "The thought had crossed my mind, Your Majesty." Princess Aurora's lips curved slightly. "Honesty. Refreshing." She gestured to the enormous holographic display dominating one wall. "What do you see?" Victoria studied the swirling patterns of light. Her neural augments kicked in, analyzing data streams hidden in the seemingly random display. "Attack patterns. Someone's been probing your defenses. Someone who knows your security protocols intimately." "Very good." The twins exchanged a look that seemed to carry volumes of unspoken communication. "We have a traitor in our court. But all Celestarans are telepathically linked to the royal bloodline," Victoria said, recalling her briefings. "How could anyone hide such thoughts?" "Precisely why we need you." Prince Asterion's scales shifted to a deep blue. "You are outside our telepathic network. Immune to our emotional resonance. And," Princess Aurora added, "possessed of humanity's most advanced neural augmentation. The perfect combination of biological intuition and technological enhancement." Victoria's augments were already cataloging minute details, the slight tension in their postures, the way their scales rippled with suppressed anxiety. "There's more you're not telling me." The twins shared another loaded glance. "Yes," they admitted in unison. "But first, you must prove yourself worthy of such knowledge." A high-pitched whine was Victoria's only warning. Her augments kicked into overdrive as hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing armed assassins. Time seemed to slow as her neural processors calculated trajectories, identified weapons, and mapped the room's architecture. She moved without conscious thought, her augmented muscles launching her toward the twins. Energy weapons sizzled through the space where they'd been standing as Victoria tackled them behind a crystalline column. In the same motion, she drew her pulse pistol and fired 3 precisely calculated shots. 3 assassins fell. But Victoria's augments detected 4 more heat signatures converging on their position. "Stay down," she ordered the twins, already plotting her next move. She felt their scales brush against her skin as they pressed closer, their bodies trembling slightly, not with fear, she realized, but with excitement. "Perhaps," Prince Asterion murmured, "we chose better than we knew." "Indeed," Princess Aurora agreed, her scales shifting to match her brother's deep blue hue. She may be exactly what we need. Victoria didn't have time to analyze the layers of meaning in their words. More assassins were coming, and she had 2 royal charges to protect. Yet as she prepared to defend them, she couldn't shake the feeling that this attack was more than just an assassination attempt. It was a test. And somehow, she knew this was only the beginning. The twin moons of Celestra cast their ethereal glow through the palace's crystal walls, bathing the royal training grounds in shifting purple and blue light. Victoria's neural augments tracked every movement as Prince Asterion and Princess Aurora circled her, their scales shimmering with predatory grace. "Your combat capabilities are impressive," Asterion said, launching a lightning-fast strike that Victoria barely deflected. "But can you handle both of us?" Aurora attacked from the opposite side, her movements perfectly synchronized with her brother's. Victoria's processors worked overtime, calculating angles and predicting patterns. The twins moved as one entity, their legendary telepathic bond allowing them to coordinate with impossible precision. But Victoria had something they didn't expect: the latest quantum-enhanced combat algorithms, combined with purely human instinct. She dropped and rolled, causing the twins to collide where she had been standing. Their surprised expressions were almost identical. "Lesson 1, Victoria said, rising smoothly. Perfect synchronization can be a weakness if your opponent knows how to exploit it." "Fascinating." Aurora's scales rippled with interest. "No one has ever used our bond against us before." "Because no one else thinks like a human," Asterion added, his silver eyes gleaming. "We've grown too predictable, sister." 3 weeks had passed since the assassination attempt, and Victoria had insisted on personally training the twins in combat. But as she watched them recover their stance, she knew the real danger wasn't physical. The political undercurrents in the Celestran court were far more treacherous than energy weapons. "Speaking of predictable," Victoria said, lowering her guard slightly, "would either of you care to explain why the second minister was accessing restricted military files during last night's reception?" The twins exchanged one of their loaded glances. "Our kind cannot lie to each other," Aurora said carefully. "The telepathic bond makes deception impossible. Which is why the traitor must have help from outside," Asterion continued. "Someone blocking or corrupting the bond." "And you suspect the second minister?" "We suspect everyone." The twins spoke in unison, their scales darkening to a troubled violet. "Even our own council." Victoria's augments detected the slight tremor in their voices, the minute stress patterns in their crystalline crown formations. They were afraid, she realized. Not for themselves, but for their people. "There's something else," she pressed. "Something about the bond itself." Before they could respond, Victoria's neural interface pinged an alert. Hidden sensors she'd placed throughout the palace had detected unusual energy signatures in the royal archives. She held up a hand for silence, processing the data. "We have company," she whispered. 3 intruders, using some kind of telepathic damping technology. They're heading for the ancestral records chamber." The twins' scales paled to an alarming white. "The prophecies," they breathed in unison. "They must not reach the sealed scrolls." Victoria was already moving, her augmented muscles carrying her silently through the shadowed corridors. The twins followed with equal stealth, their natural abilities complementing her technological enhancements. Together, they were a formidable team. But as they approached the archives, Victoria's tactical processors highlighted an anomaly. The intruders' movement patterns were too perfect, too coordinated. Almost as if. "Stop," she hissed, pulling the twins back just as a hidden energy net activated in the corridor ahead. "It's a trap. They wanted us to follow them here." "Clever human," a new voice purred from the shadows. "But not clever enough." A figure stepped into the moonlight, and Victoria's breath caught. The newcomer was Celestran, but unlike any she'd seen. Where the twins' scales shimmered with color, this being's scales were pure black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. "Impossible," Asterion whispered. "The Dark Ones were purged from our bloodline centuries ago." "Were we?" The dark figure smiled, revealing crystalline fangs. "Or did we simply learn to hide, to wait, to plan? Your precious bond makes you strong, but it also makes you blind to those who exist outside it." Victoria's augments were working frantically, analyzing energy patterns, calculating probabilities. Something about this Dark One's presence was affecting the twins. Their scales were fluctuating wildly, their telepathic bond seemingly disturbed. "The prophecy speaks of a time when the bond will be broken," the Dark One continued, "when the twin rulers will face a choice between their connection and their kingdom's survival. That time has come." Victoria watched in horror as Asterion and Aurora stumbled, their perfect synchronization faltering for the first time since she'd met them. Whatever technology the Dark One was using, it was somehow interfering with the fundamental nature of their bond. But in that moment of crisis, Victoria saw something else, a flash of pure human determination in their eyes. The twins might share a telepathic bond, but they were also individuals. And sometimes, the strongest unity came from choice rather than compulsion. As she raised her pulse pistol, Victoria knew the real battle was just beginning. The fate of an empire would depend not just on advanced technology or ancient bonds, but on the peculiarly human ability to find strength in vulnerability, and unity in difference. The ancient prophecy scrolls cast an eerie glow in Victoria's hands as her neural augments translated the crystalline script. Dawn was approaching, but the royal library's securest vault felt frozen in time. Behind her, the twin rulers paced with uncharacteristic anxiety, their scales shifting between deep purple and stormy gray. "It cannot be true," Aurora whispered, her golden eyes fixed on the scrolls. "The prophecy speaks of separation, of choice." "All bonds must be tested," Asterion replied, his silver gaze meeting Victoria's. "Even those we believe unbreakable." Victoria's processors highlighted key phrases in the ancient text: twin stars divided, darkness between, strength in separation. The implications made her blood run cold. The Dark Ones weren't trying to kill the twins, they were trying to break their bond. "The technology they used in the archives," Victoria said, "it wasn't just interfering with your connection. It was trying to sever it completely. Such separation would be fatal." Aurora's scales paled. "No bonded pair has ever survived it. Unless," Asterion moved closer to Victoria, his scales taking on an intense blue hue, "we had help. Someone outside the bond. Someone with both technological power and human adaptability." Victoria's augments registered the prince's elevated heart rate, the subtle changes in his biochemistry. She'd been noticing these reactions more frequently lately, especially when they were alone during combat training. More surprisingly, her own pulse quickened in response. "The prophecy mentions a bridge," Aurora added, stepping to Victoria's other side. Her scales matched her brother's exact shade of blue. "A being who walks between worlds, neither bound nor free." Victoria felt the weight of their gazes, the almost electrical charge in the air between them. Her neural interfaces were flooding with data, micro-expressions, pheromone levels, subtle shifts in body language. The twins weren't just looking for a protector anymore. They were looking for something far more complex. A distant explosion rocked the palace foundations. Victoria's tactical systems immediately identified the source, the main power core. Emergency lights pulsed as ancient defense systems activated. "They're making their move," Victoria drew her pulse pistol. "Using the prophecy as a distraction while they target critical infrastructure." "The Dark Ones always were clever tacticians," a silky voice echoed through the vault. The black-scaled figure from the archives emerged from a shadowy corner, flanked by others of their kind. But they forgot one crucial detail. Victoria's augments screamed warnings as a massive energy surge built up around them. She moved to shield the twins, but invisible forces held her in place. You see, the Dark One smiled, the prophecy doesn't just speak of breaking bonds. It speaks of forging new ones. Victoria watched in horror as dark energy tendrils wrapped around the twins, trying to pull them apart. Their scales blazed with resistance, their natural bond fighting the artificial separation. But this time, something was different. As her neural processors analyzed the energy patterns, Victoria realized the truth. The Dark Ones weren't trying to separate the twins from each other, they were trying to bind them to something else. Something ancient and hungry that lurked in the spaces between telepathic connections. Your human guardian cannot save you, the Dark One taunted. Her technology is impressive, but it cannot comprehend the depths of our power. But they had underestimated something fundamental about humans. Where Celestians relied on natural bonds and Dark Ones on forced ones, humans had learned to forge connections through choice, through trust, through. Victoria's augments suddenly registered a new possibility. If she could synchronize her neural interfaces with the twins' natural frequency while simultaneously disrupting the Dark One's artificial signals. Asterion, Aurora, she called out, fighting against the energy field. Do you trust me? Their response came in perfect unison, always. Victoria activated her most experimental protocol, a direct neural link that would temporarily bridge her consciousness with theirs. It was dangerous, untested, possibly fatal. But as she felt their minds touch hers, she understood why humans had always been fascinated by twin bonds. The Dark One's energy field shattered as three consciousnesses merged into one. Victoria's human intuition, enhanced by quantum processors, wove through the twins' natural bond, strengthening rather than separating. Their shared awareness expanded through the palace, identifying every Dark One, every trap, every weakness. In that moment of perfect synthesis, Victoria realized the prophecy had been right. But it wasn't about breaking bonds, it was about transcending them. About finding strength not in separation or forced unity, but in freely chosen connection. As they moved together to confront their enemies, Victoria felt something unprecedented flickering between them. Something that went beyond duty or protocol or even friendship. Something that would change three worlds forever. The neural link between Victoria and the twins pulsed with shared purpose as they moved through the palace's crystalline corridors. Their merged consciousness gave them unprecedented awareness of their surroundings, every shadow harboring potential threats, every reflection containing vital information. The Dark Ones are converging on the heart chamber, Asterion's thoughts flowed through their shared connection. The ancient room housed the quantum crystal that powered Celestia's planetary defenses. They mean to disable our entire security grid, Aurora's mental voice added, her concern rippling through their bond. Leave us vulnerable to their fleet. Victoria's augments integrated seamlessly with their telepathic exchange, providing tactical analysis and strategic options. The experimental neural bridge she'd established was holding, but she could feel the strain it placed on her systems. They had hours at most before the connection would become dangerous. Through their shared awareness, she felt something else too, emotions not her own, yet increasingly familiar. The twins' feelings for her had grown beyond mere trust or friendship, evolving into something more complex and profound. More surprisingly, she found herself responding in kind, her human heart somehow expanding to accommodate both of them equally. They encountered the first wave of Dark Ones outside the heart chamber's entrance. The enemy's scales absorbed light like black holes, their movements deadly and precise. But they couldn't match the perfect synchronization of three minds working as one. Victoria's combat algorithms merged with the twins' natural abilities, creating attack patterns that were neither purely human nor purely Celestian. Energy weapons fired with impossible accuracy while crystalline blades flashed in the artificial light. The Dark Ones fell back, clearly unprepared for this level of coordination. The prophecy speaks truth, their leader emerged from the shadows, black scales gleaming. A bridge between worlds. But did it warn you of the price? Victoria felt the twins' uncertainty flutter through their connection. There was something they hadn't told her, something about the prophecy's ultimate warning. "Show her," the Dark One commanded. "Show your precious human guardian what happens when the bridge becomes permanent." Images flooded their shared consciousness, previous attempts at similar bonds, all ending in tragedy. Human minds weren't meant to sustain prolonged contact with Celestiran telepathy. The neural degradation would be inevitable, fatal. The revelation hit Victoria like a physical blow. The twins had known. They'd known from the beginning that any deep connection between them would ultimately kill her. Their shared grief and love washed through the bond, nearly overwhelming her augments. But where the Dark Ones expected this knowledge to weaken them, it had the opposite effect. Victoria's purely human capacity for sacrifice, for choosing love despite consequences, flooded their connection with new strength. "You forget," she projected her thoughts clearly, letting both allies and enemies hear her conviction. "Humans don't need telepathy to form true bonds. We forge them through choice, through action, through..." Her words cut off as the Dark Ones launched a massive psychic assault. Victoria felt the twins' defensive barriers straining, their natural bond struggling against the onslaught. But instead of trying to reinforce their telepathic shields, she did something uniquely human: she improvised. Victoria redirected power from her neural augments into the quantum crystal at the chamber's heart, using technology to amplify the natural resonance between the twins. Their shared consciousness expanded exponentially, encompassing the entire palace, the city, the planet itself. Through their enhanced connection, they could see the Dark One's true plan. This wasn't just about Celestra, it was about fundamental forces that bound reality itself. The prophecy hadn't been warning about the dangers of connection, it had been pointing the way toward a new kind of unity. As Victoria's augments reached critical levels, she made her choice. The Dark Ones had been right about one thing: bridges had to be built carefully, mindfully. But they had been wrong about the cost. Sometimes, the strongest bonds were forged not through permanent links, but through moments of perfect understanding. With the last reserves of her neural energy, Victoria initiated her riskiest protocol yet. The twins' minds merged with hers one final time as ancient and modern powers combined in a blinding flash of possibility. Victoria awakened to the sound of crystalline chimes. The royal medical chamber sparkled with morning light, her neural augments slowly coming back online. She found herself surrounded by medical equipment that was both ancient and advanced, Celestiran healing crystals working in harmony with Earth technology. The twins stood at her bedside, their scales shimmering with relief as her eyes opened. They were no longer in perfect synchronization, instead, they moved with complementary grace, their differences as beautiful as their similarities. "The neural bridge," Victoria's voice was hoarse. "Did it work?" "Better than anyone could have predicted," Asterion smiled, his silver eyes bright. "Your human innovation combined with our ancestral power created something entirely new." "The Dark One's fleet never stood a chance," Aurora added, her scales rippling with pride. "When you linked the quantum crystal to our shared consciousness, it amplified our defensive grid 100-fold. Victoria's augments retrieved the final moments before she'd lost consciousness. The massive energy surge, the Dark One's ships falling from orbit, the way their artificial bonds had shattered under the weight of freely chosen connection. "The prophecy," she started, but Asterion gently interrupted. "Was incomplete. The ancient seers saw the potential for destruction in the joining of our peoples, but they couldn't envision the possibility of harmony." His scales shifted to a warm gold as he took her hand. "They never imagined that a human's capacity for adaptation, for voluntary bonds, could strengthen rather than weaken our natural connections," Aurora continued, taking Victoria's other hand. Her scales matched her brother's exactly, but now it was by choice rather than compulsion. Victoria's augments detected the changes in their biological signatures. The twins were still connected, still bonded, but their link had evolved. It was no longer a rigid force that demanded perfect synchronization, but a flexible bond that celebrated their individual strengths. The neural degradation, Victoria began, was based on old assumptions. A new voice interrupted. The royal physician entered, her scales shimmering with excited professionalism. Your human neural plasticity, combined with your augment's adaptive capabilities, has created a sustainable interface with our telepathic field. You're not just surviving the connection, you're thriving in it. The implications slowly sank in. Victoria could feel the subtle resonance between them, not the overwhelming merge of consciousness they'd experienced during battle, but something gentler. A bridge built on understanding rather than force. The Council has approved our proposal, Asterion said, his joy radiating through their newfound connection. Earth and Celestra will enter a new age of cooperation, with you as our permanent liaison. And perhaps, Aurora added, her scales taking on a deeper gold hue that made Victoria's heart race, something more than just a liaison. Victoria's augments registered the subtle changes in the room's atmosphere, the way the twins moved closer, their scales harmonizing in patterns that spoke of possibility rather than prophecy. The future stretched before them, not as a predetermined path, but as a canvas for chosen connections. I suppose, Victoria smiled, squeezing both their hands, this gives new meaning to the term diplomatic relations. The twins laughed in harmony, but no longer in perfect unison. Their individual voices created something richer than synchronization, a chord rather than a single note. As the three of them gazed out at the crystal spires of the palace, where Earth ships now docked peacefully alongside Celestran vessels, Victoria realized that some bonds were stronger precisely because they were chosen, renewed, and cherished each day. The prophecy had been right about one thing: she was a bridge between worlds. But bridges didn't just connect, they transformed both shores they touched, creating something entirely new in the space between. As dawn broke over Celestra's twin suns, that space held infinite possibility.